we're talking to you today because you've had to leave Africa. I was about to say you've had to go out of Africa. You've had to leave Africa because some guys were trying to kill you. And that's generally not like a sentence you want to say to a guy. It doesn't play well at parties. Can you, before we really get started here on talking about the general gist of what we're talking about, can you tell us why you are currently not in Africa right now?
So a little bit of a gonna have to be a little bit of a multi-layered answer here, but I'll move through it a little bit briskly. So I've been based in the Democratic Republic of the Congo for the last 4 years, in Eastern DRC, and for the last year and a half, myself and a team of Congolese investigators have been working on an investigation about a national park in Congo called Kauzi-Biega National Park. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's an international tourist destination. You know, people come in from all over the world to take pictures of gorillas there, things like this. And it's also a park which has received enormous financial support from a lot of different governments in the global north, the German government, US government in different time periods. And anyway, we did this investigation of about a year and a half in this park, documenting how park rangers have been sent on a organized campaign to burn down villages inhabited by an indigenous community, shell them with heavy weapons. In the campaign, sort of indiscriminately firing at civilians, even with sort of belt-fed machine guns, employing heavy weapons like mortars and rockets, organizing group rape of indigenous women, all as part of a campaign to push these people off of their land. And so we worked on this investigation, as I said, for about a year and a half. Part of it was literally visiting villages days after they were destroyed, recovering shell casings used by the attackers, recovering physical evidence of the attacks, photographing the villages while they're literally still smoldering. And anyway, at the beginning of this year, we published, about a 100-page sort of investigation touching on all these issues. A lot of the international supporters of the park sort of panicked. There's a good amount of sort of press attention associated with it. In particular, the Germans, said this is outrageous and horrible, and we're going to make decisions about whether we're going to continue to support the park. Which a lot of this was bullshit because they'd been notified in writing repeatedly of the fact that all this was going on, and didn't give a fuck when the notifications weren't public. But nonetheless, said this is terrible, and we're going to make decisions about whether or not we'll continue supporting the park based off of our own investigation that we're organizing, which I was asked to participate in as the author of the original report. And basically, I went in to sort of support this investigation funded by the German government with my colleague, who's a Congolese investigator. And we can get into some of the dynamics around all this. It's a little complicated, but the whole thing was really run like a blunt and violent cover-up in a lot of different ways. Sources were intimidated. Investigators laughed about gang rape. And in the end, it culminated in efforts by high-level people working for this park to hunt down and kill myself, my colleague, as well as leaders of the community. So, a ton of people were forced into hiding. My colleague is in a safe house with his family. I was forced to flee the country. Guys with guns turned up at my apartment. Ditto for my colleague. Ditto for leaders of the community guys with guns turned up in their villages, sort of looking for them, for leaders of the community who are key sources for this investigation. So basically, the short of it is that senior people sort of working with this park have been trying to silence everybody who's sought to document or be, an outspoken critic of several-year campaign of violence against this indigenous community. Yeah.
So can we talk a little bit about this park? What's the little bit of the history of the park, and why is it so supported by all these, governments? You mentioned the German government. At other times, in the past, the U.S. government. What's a little bit of the history here?
Yeah, I mean, so this is a park, like most of these sort of national parks throughout the continent, around the world. It was established in the sort of colonial period. So it was established by the Belgian colonizer. And then at independence, you basically had this, sort of white Belgian conservationists, this guy called Adrian de Schrijver, come in and start to really lobby the independence government in Congo. Now we're in like the 1970s, to really sort of formalize restrictions on populations living inside the park, and also to expand the park. And so this
Right.
guy de Schrijver went in, and there was this particular indigenous community that I've been talking about, the Batwa, who, for whom this area inside this park is their ancestral homeland. They've lived there literally for millennia, since time immemorial. And this guy, De Schrijver, who, by the way, I mean, he's like really a lion figure until today, among conservationists. He was like the last, one of the last sons of the minister, he was the son of the last minister of the colonies or something,
Oof.
So there's like
For
the standard.
Belgium?
Yeah, Belgium.
That's
so like standard.
yeah. That's like being the son of Otto Skorzeny or something. That's not a.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
like not a
Right,
great.
Yeah.
Belgian
Yes.
minister of the Congo is probably one of the most bloodthirsty jobs that you can get in the 20th
100%,
century.
100%. And that's like, with all these things, it's like these direct links to, sort of enormously destructive colonial enterprises. But anyway, this dude comes in, and like I said, until today, you got on Reddit like videos of the guy walking around with gorillas and, people sort of masturbating about it. But nonetheless, this guy comes in and he talks to members of the indigenous community, says, can you show me where all the gorillas are, show me the different areas, the flora and the fauna. He sort of maps out the area that would become the park a little bit. Then he goes back to Europe, comes back not long thereafter, accompanied by park guards and soldiers, and tells the community, this is no longer your land. You got to get the hell out of here. The village is burnt down, everyone forced out at gunpoint. That was in the middle of the 1970s. So then you had this community living in really, really enormously terrible conditions for several decades. By some estimates, about half of the community dies off from that point. And you've also got this sort of progressive death of sort of cultural elements that are really core to the existence of this community. So really sort of, this project is genocidal in its impact on the Batwa. Then come 2018, you've got sort of a radical core of the leadership make a decision, damn the torpedoes, fuck the consequences. We're going to go back in. This land is ours. We've received however many broken promises for decades, whatever. We're going to go back in and rebuild our villages. So in 2018, you've got this return, villages rebuilt, and this is when you have the beginning of this new wave of enormous violence, incidentally backed at different points by the U.S. government, German government, other sort of international actors. Yeah.